Hey everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday episode of the Nonprofits. This week, we're talking the Kansas City Chiefs, and Trust But Verify has more details.
Thanks, Eli. So, in a recent piece from Essentially Sports, Chiefs owner Clark Hunt highlighted how Patrick Mahomes has become more openly vocal about his Christian faith over the years. Hunt noted that Mahomes grew up in a Christian household, was active in youth group as early as 7th grade, and now regularly expresses gratitude to God in public, including on social media and during team activities. The article frames this shift as a natural progression rather than a sudden conversion, pointing out that Mahomes has simply grown more comfortable showing the beliefs he has held since childhood. The report also emphasizes how the Chiefs organization integrates faith into its culture through optional non-denominational chapel services and team-supported spiritual development. Hunt believes this environment has reinforced Mahomes' willingness to live his faith more publicly while maintaining focus on leadership and performance. So the underlying question becomes whether Mahomes' increasingly visible faith reflects a broader trend among athletes and whether this blend of personal belief and professional culture will continue shaping how he leads both on and off the field. So this is from Essentially Sports by Surab Kumar on November 9th, 2025.
Outstanding. Thank you. Now, before I share my thoughts, because I have a lot of context that I want to add, I want to hear from both of you. So Trust, I'll start with you. Do you think that this is, and of course we're speculating on someone else's, thoughts, right? But do you think this is a genuine shift possibly, or is it a performance, and for whom? Or is it indicative of something even deeper?
I think it's indicative of something deeper. I think it's the saturation of the culture that's there. I mean, it did say that he was in a youth group in 7th grade and things of that sort. But I'd say a lot of us were. And now that he's in that culture and he's around that every day, because, one thing about football teams is they're around each other a lot, during the week, and they spend a lot of hours together. And so if you're just enmeshed in that culture, if you're just ingrained in it, it's gonna stick at some point. So I don't think so much is performative. I think it's indoctrination.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking along the same lines. Common sense, Colt, what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking that it reflects a broader cultural shift. What with Christianity and more outspoken Christianity becoming more normal. We've seen this in everything from legislature to just common social circles where people are not necessarily experience a revolution of faith, but you hear rhetoric about it's time to be more vocal, it's time to be more outspoken about your faith. And I think that this is honestly a result of that. And he probably has honestly become more confident in his faith and more comfortable in it. I don't think it's performative on that level. I think he truly believes it. I don't think that would be a lie, but I do think it is a result of the environment he is in specifically in the team, but also a general cultural shift as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think you both of you together, actually kind of nailed what I was thinking. Because I agree. I think one might mistake it for performative, because if you were to remove him from that culture, it would maybe fade away a little bit, maybe not completely, but to a degree. But I only got about halfway through the article, because when I started reading it, I had a thought, and I was like, I'm going to figure this out once I'm done reading this. And I didn't even have to look it up, because it says, there's a direct quote. It says, he, referring to CEO of the Kansas City Chiefs, Clark Hunt, has also built a big culture around his Christian faith and makes it his top priority for the staff as well. And I think that is just a perfect example of how personal religious beliefs shape culture, because the Chiefs, I'm not a sports ball guy. I do this shit, but the Chiefs have a huge following. And there was Harrison Butker last year, I think it was, with the commencement speech at, what was the name of the college? Benedictine College in Kansas City, I'm pretty sure. And he had his whole thing, and he basically just peddled Christian nationalist values about women, basically. And while earning points from his CEO, Clark Hunt, because of like this atmosphere of Christianity that he's fostered in Chiefs Nation, he got all this backlash. He got some backlash, and he was lauded by others, like that in the fandom, for speaking these ideas and getting points from his CEO. And I think in the case of Patrick Mahomes and other players on the team, they're going to be surrounded by that all the time, just like you said. And it's that saturation of that ideology that is going to just reinforce it. That's why right. Church is weekly. It's like every Sunday, like, you know, you have to have it reiterated over and over again for it to stick. So my question is, while they can't impose a formal go along to get along policy, the law doesn't prevent a privately owned business like the Kansas City Chiefs from aligning their business with their theology. So how many of the staff and players do we think feel exactly that's exactly the sort of environment that they work in? And could their growing faith, do we think, it seems like you've both said, could it be a facade for that purpose, or just the result of that consistent reiteration? Common sense, you first.
I think it's a result of the consistent reiteration, and also the rhetoric that says that anybody that goes against you, speaking out against your faith, is from the devil. It's a spiritual attack. So people who, like you said, were not attacked, but were criticized for speaking out about their faith, that would just be seen as a demonic attack, and we have to speak louder. And so being around people, even if not everybody believes that way, it is a majority, and the CEO is a Christian. The owner is a Christian. And they offer, the article says, services before the game. So just being in that environment, being around people who speak that way, who believe that way, who act the way, it just becomes part of your part of who you are. And it's honestly coercion, in my opinion. And while it's technically legal, I think that it is incredibly manipulative. And just imagine, like, I don't know much about football, but players get traded and bought, right? And so if you get bought onto a team that has the owners very Christian, most of the team members are very Christian, and like, imagine you're, I don't know, Buddhist, atheist, whatever, and you're thrown into this environment where you feel completely uncomfortable. What do? You're a team, you work together, you spend time together, you do everything together. What do you do in that situation? How would you avoid being coerced? And I think it raises a lot of ethical and even legal questions about whether this should even be happening, because the NFL is secular. Is this allowed? Should they be having stuff like this occur? Should this even be a conversation? I don't know. It raises a lot of concerns for me. And it even reminded me of the court case, the Coach Kennedy case that went to the Supreme Court, where it was a high school coach. So there is a lot more limitations on what can be said, but they allowed him to pray in front of players because it was his constitutional right, which is, in my opinion, incorrect. But that aligns with this here. Like, is this okay for a owner to be allowing this in the team? Is this okay? Should players be talking about the religion? Should this be a team thing? And it raises a lot of questions I think people should be talking about, honestly.
Yeah. Trust, did you go ahead?
Yeah, 100% agree with you, Common Sense Cult. And, you know, the other thing that is important to understand here is because I played sports a lot, like when I was a kid, and up until recently, I was really into football and most of the major sports here in this country. And I got to tell you, though, that the quarterback is like the leader of the team. And so as the quarterback goes, the rest of the team follows. And so if this is coming from the quarterback, and you're going to get in line as a team because you want to be seen as a team player. You don't want to be seen as an outcast or going against the grain. That's the last thing you want to see. And also the other thing about the NFL is, yeah, you're right. Common sense is like players get traded and they're picked up as free agents. I liked what you use the word bot, as you said, because it's not that far from the truth. It honestly, it's really not. But they're also, their contracts are all non-guaranteed, so you could be cut at any time. So just imagine you could literally lose your fucking job if you are outspoken and just say, you know what, I'm an atheist and I don't really buy into this. They can cut you just like that. So with no hesitation. And it can be, because they've cut, I just remember what they did to Colin Kaepernick, many, many years ago. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he was a quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. He was taking a knee during the national anthem, and then lo and behold, he gets cut. And he was the starting quarterback for the team. So obviously, you have to fall in line if you're going to want to have a job, even though they're saying you're making millions of dollars. But see, the thing is not, not all the players make millions of dollars, even though they still make a lot of money. Their contracts aren't guaranteed. So when you go to the money you're making to zero overnight, I mean, it's a financial hit. So of course they have an incentive to want to get in line, get with the program, go to church go to the church services, participate in prayer. And that's going to be top down, across the entire organization. And then the thing I also think about is this is a private organization, right? So like you were saying earlier, Eli, they're not beholden to a lot of these laws, that we have, separation of church and state, that completely goes out of the window. That doesn't even apply here. So they have almost complete discretion over the type of employee they want to hire. While they may not say out and out, if you're a Muslim, you can't work here. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's going to be very subtle, and it's going to be very, you're gonna know. I mean, you see crosses hanging, people are praying and saying thank God and all this other stuff. You're gonna know what the culture is there. So they're definitely looking for a certain type of employee to work there, and that family thing that they're talking about, it just gave me shudders.
Yeah. You both said a lot of things I agree with. To both of your points about the sort of exclusion of other beliefs, right? Because we've clarified, of course, they can't outwardly and conspicuously discriminate against non-Christians, but they can make it so obvious that they have such a Christian culture that everybody who's not a Christian is like, I don't want anything to do with that. So now they don't have to worry about it. They're sort of selecting themselves out by making it so obvious that they have this Christian culture. And they not only do they offer chapel services before the games, like you mentioned, Common Sense, but they're the only team in the NFL that offers chapel services before all the games. And they have like a similar like prayer service for fans in the gazebo at the stadium before the game, so that the ones that are skipping out on church or like missing church or leaving church early to come to the game don't have to like sin. They don't have to feel bad for leaving church to come to the game. It is absolutely, and excuse me, you mentioned something, Trust, that makes this is why it sticks in my mind a little bit, that this might just be like a facade, because the quarterback is the leader of the team. And let's just say, like you said, like I was in youth group when I was in 7th grade, and now I do this shit, right? So like that isn't necessarily indicative that a person is going to be, strongly religious or faithful or whatever it may be when they get older. I think that because there is so much pressure on him to get the rest of the team in line, and in line includes like outwardly expressing Christian faith or belief or values, I think there's at least a non-zero possibility that like the leadership of the Chiefs had a conversation with Patrick Mahomes and was saying, look, we don't care if you believe it. You better convince us that you do. And That way, all the rest of the players will fall in line, because human behavior is kind of like a liquid. It will take the shape of whatever container is paying it millions of dollars to play its favorite game on national TV. And like you said, the rest of the behavior will fall in line with the quarterback, and the fans as well. And it's just, and that's exactly how I think it is so impactful on culture as a whole, not just on the Chiefs staff and employees, but those who follow that team.
You're kind of making a good point here, because I'm going to backtrack what I said just a tiny bit, because while I did say, I brought up the example of Colin Kaepernick, who was the quarterback of the 49ers, and he subsequently got cut. And he did have like a huge contract right when that happened. And one of the other things, though, is Mahomes is a future Hall of Famer. It's doubtful that he would have to do something completely egregious in order to be cut from that team. I mean, on the level of like some Ted Bundy shit, it would be something like that. Right. And so but him becoming more outspoken, it might be a like a performative ploy, or just a bit of, hey, you gotta be performative. You gotta show that you're the leader of the team. They may have said it much, in so many words that sent the message that, hey, you got to get on board with this, or, hey, you're the leader of the team. So, you're going to set the example. And he might have either gotten the message or just taken it upon himself to do that. But the other part of it, though, is that I still think it's indoctrination. And here's why, at the end of the day, because in a lot of ways, Patrick Mahomes is untouchable. So he could have just said, hey, I was in this, and, it's great to be on this team. He could have been a little bit more non-committal about it. And then I look at his family. His wife is very Christian. Her parents are very Christian. His parents are pretty Christian. He's like deep in this. I mean, it's everywhere he goes. There's Christians everywhere around, and this is in Kansas City, like in the middle of the Bible Belt. I mean, you can't get any more deep than that. So, I think that at the end of the day, that's what tips the scales for me, that this is indoctrination.
Yeah, I think your case requires fewer assumptions. Let's just razor those off.
Yeah, right.
I'm there. All right, you got me. Common sense. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the halftime show, and I just read today, I believe it was the Chiefs owner's daughter. I believe, I could be wrong, but she spoke out about the conservative option for the Super Bowl halftime show. And I forgot that was happening, but Turning Point USA proposed a more conservative halftime show, and seeing the Chiefs' daughter speak out about it, and just seeing how there's this whole shift in the NFL. And again, like I said, the culture is leaning towards more Christian elements, and the fact that his daughter speaking out about it makes it very clear that it's the whole team, the whole environment. Obviously, it's indoctrination and coercion. I think those two go hand in hand, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think that does it for my questions. I think we had another great conversation here. The last one, common sense. You said you don't know football at all, so I mean you can give your opinion if you have one. But trust, are you a Chiefs fan?
No, I'm not a Chiefs fan. And we were talking between segments about how I was a big fan for years, and that my interest has waned because I'm seeing more of the players thanking God for their athletic ability and that they were able to score touchdowns. And then meanwhile, we've got a humanitarian disaster in Gaza and a civil war in Sudan, and they're not even talking anything about that. And, and the fact that the owners of the NFL, all 32 owners collectively could end hunger and homelessness in the United States, or at least put a huge fucking dent into it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And, and meanwhile, they're charging like $150 a ticket. So, and after all that, after all this prayer, after all this invoking God, the Kansas City Chiefs are 5-5. So don't think it's helping out very much. They're a mediocre team. So
Yeah,
suck it.
fair enough. I liked him for a while a couple of years ago when Mahomes first came on the scene, when I was still following or paying any attention whatsoever. Following would be a strong word. But yeah, now, like I said, I don't really follow it anymore. Common Sense, do you have an opinion on a favorite NFL team?
I have to say Steelers. It's the only team I've ever rooted for. So, and I don't care that much to change it. But it was also a team that used to be owned by a Christian owner, and my parents never let me forget it. And that's why our family rooted for the Steelers, because they had a Christian owner. So this is not new.
Yeah. Only NFL team with their logo only on one side of their helmets.
That's pretty dope.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. Yeah. And they've had like 3 coaches in like the last 50 years, you know. So
this is long tenures. I remember a few years ago they were doing pretty solid during my last fantasy football season is what
we have 6 Super Bowls. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Too.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for another great conversation. I think we'll go ahead and end it there. If you want to see more from the nonprofits, check back this Friday at 6 p.m. Central Time, or click on the links below. Actually, do both. You can do both of those things.
Yeah, do both.